Hi everyone, I just wanted to do a quick video now that we've done our 4 panels in January. Next week is our 5th Sunday, so we're going to do something slightly different. But we've got our 4 panels completed now, and I just wanted to show you what I was planning on doing with my panels and just talk you through that. So I've got my 4 panels here. If you remember, this was week 1 where we looked at straight stitch and lettering. We just played around, got ourselves used to sewing, and created almost like a New Year's resolution for the year. Then week 2 we looked at snow, and in this week we learnt about adding beads and buttons and embellishments to our work. Week 3 we learnt a new stitch, we learnt stem stitch, and we created a winter tree. So this was our nature-based prompt. And week 4 we did our slow stitch live stream, and we joined together on YouTube to create our slow stitch panel. So these are my 4 pieces, and I'm going to turn mine into a book. So I'm going to create a journal of stitch through the year using my panels to create pages, and so they fit quite nicely together to make a page of a square book. I'm going to put my 4 panels each month together to make a page, and then I'll attach the pages together. So I just wanted to talk you through my process. First thing I'm going to do is trim my panels back. So if I just move these out of the way and bring in my cutting mat, I've got a cutting mat that's measured in centimetres, and I'm just going to move my piece so that I'm going to take roughly half a centimetre off. So if you see here, my piece is now overlapping my thick white line by about half a centimetre, and that's the same all the way around. I'm going to line my ruler up with that thick white line, and I'm going to use my rotary cutter, pressing firmly all the way along, and I've got a straight edge. So now I could turn the board, but I'm going to just turn the work because that's going to suit me better while I'm filming. So again, I'm going to line up my felt, line up my ruler with the thick line on my cutting mat, and take my piece away. So I'm going to do that on all 4 sides. So I've lined up, making sure that my piece is square now. I've got a proper right angle here, so I'm just lining up that to make sure it's square, so that I do my 3rd side, and I'm going to be careful that I don't cut any of my fabrics on my slow stitch piece. And finally I'm going to just take a little bit off this edge as well. Okay, now normally when you're using a rotary cutter you'd use the ruler to hold the piece down, but because I've put buttons and the Suffolk puff there, it's too lumpy, and so it's not going to be safe because my ruler is going to rock and move around. So that's why I was just trapping a little bit at the edge. Now what I want to do, let's just work with these 2 first of all, is just create a little bit of overlap, because I'm going to stitch these pieces together so that they sit nicely. So what I've done is overlap just by a small amount, maybe half a centimetre, and I'm just going to put a pin in to hold it in place. Now that pin is alright for a short time, but it's actually distorting the felt. I think you can just about see the lump there, and I don't want it to distort the felt because I want my pages to lie flat. So what I'm going to do, it's very rare that you'll see me do this, I'm going to tack it, and I've got some bright orange thread here so that it's easy to see, and I'm just going to run along that edge and tack it in place. I haven't knotted this thread quite deliberately. It does mean I have to be careful with my first couple of stitches not to pull too tight, because I just want to be able to pull it out. So I'm just checking that my piece is straight, because we don't want wonky edges on our book. Now I've gone past my pin there, so I'm going to just take it out so that everything's straight and lined up. And I'm just making sure the bottom edge is aligned as I'm stitching, so that my piece hasn't moved. And I'm just going to cut my thread off. I'm not going to knot it, I'm just going to cut it off there. Then I'm going to do the same with this top piece. So we've got our 2 pairs of panels. So again, you can see that this one's got a little bit of an overhang. That's because I stitched a little bit outside my box without realising. So that's going to be an overlap. And my dark grey piece there just sits underneath my black piece. So again, I'm just going to line it up, make sure I've got the same overlap on both pieces. And that my piece is straight, and then I'm just going to stitch along that middle. Okay, so that's our page tacked together. I want to be able to use this book as a record of my stitching through the year. So what I'm going to do is add a little tab on the outside that's going to overhang the edge of my page, that's going to have the month on it. And I've got a piece of grey here that I didn't get to use in my work, so I quite like it. It's a silvery grey. So what I've done is I've cut a tab and I've written the word January in my heat erase pen, and that's going to just sit underneath there like that. So I've got some black embroidery thread, and I'm just going to backstitch these letters, and as the months go on I'm going to be able to embroider my lettering with different stitches depending on what we've learnt that month. So for January we just used straight stitches, running stitch and back stitch, so I'm just going to use back stitch. Okay, so I've done my lettering and I can erase the pen with an iron whenever I'm ready. So I'm just going to trim that off, and I am going to pin it just down from the top of the page, just making sure it's straight and that I haven't covered any of my stitching. And with my orange I can just tack it in place again like the others. So what I'm going to do now is add some decorative stitching, and I've got a grey thread here that shows up on all 4 panels, and I was thinking back to our stitch tutorial and we looked at cross stitch as part of our straight stitch collection. I haven't actually used any cross stitch anywhere. I suppose these are sort of like cross stitch over here where I did a diagonal cross and then a vertical cross, but I haven't really made much of cross stitch at all. And so I think I'm going to do a line of cross stitch to join the panels together. And the other advantage of that is that obviously my thread's going to go through both pieces of felt. So at the join I'm going to make more of a focus, so I'm going to make my cross wider, and I think I'm going to add a vertical cross as well, just being careful that I'm catching both pieces of felt. So done my horizontal cross first, let's turn it into a star just by adding in a vertical and a horizontal. And it's partly decorative, but it's also partly functional, because obviously you've got 4 pieces of felt joining, so I don't want it to look ugly, but I've also got 4 layers that are needing to behave themselves. So I might add a little bit more detail to that. You could put a button at the centre or some other decorative detail, it's entirely up to you. Okay, so I've added in my cross stitches across the joins, and I've just added some tiny if I bring it really close you might be able to see tiny stitches that are almost invisible. You can see one just there, almost invisible, just to hold the tab in place. All that's left for me to do is to remove the tacking. So I'm just going to get my seam ripper in there, and I'm just going to pull on my loose ends that I left. And if you need to, you can give that another press from the back. I'll need to press it just to get rid of my pen marks there. But that's the first page of my Winging It Stitch journal for 2022. I will show you some other things that you can do with your panels as we go through the year, but if you want to make a book, that's how to put your page together. So once we've done our week 5 page, which is going to be this size, I'm working on a larger scale next week, I'll show you how to put one page next to the other and attach them together. Okay, so I hope that's been helpful. Love to see what you're going to do with your panels if you've got different ideas, and I'll see you in our week 5 video. Bye!